Hi, my name is Ben Helfon. I am the co-author of Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. And welcome once again to our weekly little fireside, I guess it's not fireside, internet chat. And as always, I am joined, I can't see the screen right now, technical difficulties right off the stop, but where is she? There, well, that's everyone.
Yeah, we're all here. Yay!
Well, usually we do a big introduction, but for some reason, we're having issues. But anyways, why don't I just introduce our guest, who is a 3-time guest on our Happy Divorce live stream. And we're joined by award-winning clinical psychologist and host of the Divorce Podcast and soon-to-be released book that is going to be a game changer in the divorce industry, Light on the Other Side of Divorce, Discovering the New You, Dr. Elizabeth Cohen. After experiencing her own divorce, Dr. Cohen made it her mission to help those going through the same feelings, darkness, and devastation. In her practice, she provides a holistic, cognitive behavioral approach that empowers her clients to learn, grow, and heal through the divorce process. Dr. Elizabeth Cohen, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thanks for the sound effects, Ben and Susan. Thank you so much for having me. You are my, team, my support, my believers. So it's really such an honor to be here with you and to be sharing this space because we all have the same beliefs about the possibility of doing this whole process differently.
Yes, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Kate is not with us tonight. She took her last personal day and vacation day of the year, and it's only April. So it's going to be a tough year for Kate. But I am joined by Susan. Susan, you didn't get the proper introduction, so.
Hi, it's me. Hi, I'm just happy to be here with Dr. Elizabeth. I do have to brag for just a minute. She's been on Divorce and Beyond 5 times and coming up next Monday. But, I'm not saying she likes me better,
but she likes you better. I like you better than I like me, so that makes more sense. Doctor, there's so much stuff that we want to talk about, the book and the summit and your practice. But first, sort of give people introduction to who you are and why. After 15 years or how many practicing clinical psychology, did you move into the divorce space?
Well, thanks, Ben and Susan, again for having me. I love talking to your audience and just being with the two of you. It's just such a gift. So thank you. So I was practicing, as you said, for over 15 years. And in some ways, I was living 2 different lives, especially when I would go to the office, see clients, give suggestions, hold sacred space for them. And then in my case, go home to a deeply sick alcoholic husband and decide how I was going to get him sober, how I was going to take care of my kids, how I was not going to lose my mind. And so I was actually for a long time living that I don't think I realized until later how much of a toll it took on me. And that's it's kind of a good example of what I work on in the book for people, like these hidden little pain points that you don't even realize you have when you're going through a difficult marriage or a divorce. And you might think, oh, well, that's over, right? So once I kicked him out and I left him, I was going to work and I didn't have to worry about who was going to be there when I got home or what was going to happen. But you know what? When my current husband moved in, I'll never forget the first night I came home from work, I was convinced he was going to be drunk. And this is a man who doesn't really drink. I was just convinced. It was like my nervous system was just right back, right in that place of fear. And there are my dogs who are also in a moment of fear. Sorry.
We're dog friendly, so it's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good. So that I was in this space of fear and I couldn't actually move through and be in a new relationship until I processed the pain from the past. And I know Ben and Susan believe with me so deeply that unless you process what you've been through and what your side of the street, you cannot heal.
And so after you got divorced and you realized that, is that when you decided to go and make this a focus of your work
Yeah, I
and your
didn't answer your
practice?
question at all.
No,
I was just realized like, oh, and I didn't answer your question. I just wanted to tell you this story that, and this is what happens when I talk to both of you. I have these all these epiphanies. Like I never actually thought of that before until this moment. Like you create such beautiful space for me that I just allow myself to have all these feelings. So thank you.
Awesome.
But yeah, so what happened, I will now answer your actual question. So what happened was I basically decided, what happened for me was that I looked up divorce recovery in Google and I couldn't find anything back then. And I didn't realize until recently that not finding something made me feel like I wasn't going to be able to recover. And so, because otherwise, why wouldn't there be information out there? So I painstakingly, with my privilege of my education, put together and pieced together a healing program for myself that took time. And I then started sharing it with my clients and created it into an online program and the book because I never wanted another person to have to piece it together. I wanted it to be a comprehensive treatment healing program for anyone going through a divorce or considering divorce.
And that it does. Susan, I'll let you hop in here in a sec. But I had the pleasure of reading the book and shows you how much respect I have for you because I'm not really a reader. But you know, for me, it was like a manual. I mean, to me, it works as like a manual, and they're broken into chapters. You know, so when you're broken, just like you know, something breaks on your TV, you go to the troubleshooting guide, and you can sort of see, you know, where you're being stuck, and go to that chapter and get unstuck. And I think it's a masterful. It's going to be a game changer. Let's not tease. When does it come out?
It comes out a week from tomorrow, so April 20th. It's available for pre-order right now, and I actually just found out that there are 1,200 lucky people who've already pre-ordered it,
Wow.
which means they've also been qualified for 3 amazing free bonus workshops that I'm giving on living in the afterglow, dating after divorce, and how to co-parent with ease. So if you pre-order now before next Tuesday, you can also be automatically enrolled in those workshops.
Well, I think Nikki and I will sell 1,200 books by 2027. That's pretty impressive. Susan, from a legal standpoint, somebody who's been in it for a few years, how can something like this help? And not only the book, but also what Dr. Cohen does.
Well, you used the term game changer, and I think maybe that gets used a lot in the world we live in. But in this particular case, as a divorce professional, I know that it will be a game changer. I also have been lucky enough to read it. And, one of the things that I know as a divorce attorney is that many people they grit their teeth, they grind it out and get through the divorce. And then they get to the other side of it and they just go into like this, I don't even know what to call it, like a life of limbo, a life where they haven't healed, they haven't moved past the trauma, they haven't processed, nothing has happened for them except the busy work of the divorce is over. And the beauty of Elizabeth's book is that, much as you just said, Ben, not only can you pick it up when you're having an issue and find the chapter that's going to help you with that issue, you can pick up the book if you're thinking about divorce, if you are in the middle of your divorce, or if you are one of those people that I meet all the time who tell me about their divorce and then that it was 10 years ago and they're still stuck somewhere in it. And everyone who's going through it at any part of the process will benefit from it. And that is where there's truly going to be a game changer. And it's concrete. This isn't one of those ephemeral books that says, well, sit in a nice, bright, shiny corner and hum and think happy thoughts. And, Bella's going to come along with her magic wand and everything's going to be great. Right. We'll talk about Bella in a little minute. This is actual concrete. You have to do the work stuff, but you will come out on the other side. There is a light on the other side. So that's, I'm excited for everyone out there to read this book and have it available to them.
So the work is actual actionable, right? It's actual doing work.
Yeah. I mean,
and really,
yeah.
if you could just talk about it, we talk about it sort of like in not phases, but in stages, I guess is the right word, of, like Susan said, making that decision. And then what real work can people do before, they go through the business process of a divorce?
Yeah, this is something I know that Ben, you and I, and Susan and I talk a lot about, which is, you know, you prepare we prepare ourselves for everything. Think about, if you have a young kid and you're, at least maybe, I assume it's the same in Chicago and Florida and New York, like, you prep for them applying to preschool as if they're applying for college. It's like a huge process. Make sure they, where you're going, go on interviews, go on tours. Like, okay, so we do that for everything in our life except for divorce. It's like we spend all this time. I think it's because we're trying to like fix the relationship and heal the relationship and do all the work to keep the relationship going. And then when we decide that it's finished and it's served its beautiful purpose and we're ready to move on, which is how I think of it, we don't prepare ourselves at all for that process. I mean, we only try to find out the best lawyers and maybe the financial planners, but we don't emotionally prepare ourselves. And the nervous system needs to be prepared. The nervous system hates to be surprised. It hates to be thrown off. Then it goes into fight, flight, or freeze and acts wildly inappropriate. And Susan, I mean, you see this all the time where people, if you haven't processed your feelings, right? The mediator says one small thing and somebody flies off the handle. And I'm sure, Susan, you've sat there and been like, okay, this is actually not about me. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so if you can clean your side of the street, as you like to say so beautifully, Ben, and if you can prepare yourself in the sense of healing what's been painful, what's been hard, processing your anger, which there's chapters on, processing your grief, really looking at your patterns, then when you step into the divorce process, you'll just be more prepared to make clearer decisions that will be good for the rest of your life. Susan always talks about this amazing point that your life, this is only a small time period of your life. So if you need to act kind of as if you can see the light at the other side of divorce when you're going through the divorce. And I think that's what my book can help people do.
That is amazing. And I had a question in there, and I think you just blew me away. And I actually am speechless. Please mark down the time and date. This does not happen very often. Before it might pop into my head real quick, but if you're listening and you're watching online, you have the two greatest minds in the space who charge very much money per hour. So if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to get them and ask them in the chat, and we'll get to it. I guess I got it. See, I told you it would come back. How do you know when you're ready? Right? How do you know when you are ready to call Susan or to call the lawyer and really get into it? Is there? I know for me, I didn't know. I mean, I guess maybe it was the revelation of my part in it and the clear understanding of my part, and that was sort of my gauge. But how can what advice can you give people that they're done the work, they're ready to maybe move on to the next step?
So I lost you a little bit because it was my internet, but I think what you were asking, just so I'm right, is that how do you know when you're ready to move on to the next step?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's really important, Ben, that you're even talking about it as steps. So a lot of people that I interview on my podcast and the clients I've had, often look back and think I should have left earlier. I should have, maybe I wasted my time. I just want to let people know listening that only you know when is the right time. Like, only you know. I don't know. Susan doesn't know. Kate doesn't. Like, we don't know. Only you know. And it will be a moment when you're ready. And then, rather than making your first call to a lawyer or to a financial planner, why don't you make, either check out my book or make your first call to a coach or to a therapist. Turn inward before you go outward. because if you can do some inward work, the outward will be cheaper and faster, way more efficient. Like I don't know why people always jump to that. I think probably because of the kind of action oriented way we are in the world. But what would it be like, guys, if like you were like, no, you can't meet with a lawyer until you have, read my book, or you have 6 therapy sessions or 4 coaching sessions. Like, imagine how different that would be.
Yeah. And Susan, I know there's some states that have the quote unquote cooling off period, but there's no.
It's all a cooling off period is from the date the paperwork is filed until the date a court can actually dissolve the relationship, dissolve the legal relationship. That's all that is. It's just a time period where the judge doesn't have that ability. And it's really just so that people don't get upset and go, have a fight and go quickly get divorced and then regret it. But it has nothing to do with healing. It has nothing to do, I think Elizabeth just said it perfectly. Turning inward is the key to moving through the entire process. And Ben, you talk about that so eloquently in the book and, on the show and every podcast episode that you do. It's not until you can actually have that inward focus. And I'll be honest, I didn't get it until probably a year after my divorce was final. I spent my entire divorce thinking about how my ex-husband had screwed everything up and it was all his fault. It wasn't until like a year later when my life still wasn't getting any better and I wasn't able to, go where I wanted to go. And by that, I mean, not physically go where I wanted to go. I wanted to move on and have the life that I'd always wanted. And it wasn't until I started to do that work, which is what Elizabeth just said, turn inward, that things will start to change. And I think the game changer here, to go back to that phrase, is that Elizabeth's book gives you it's like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. If you have the book, you've always had the power, my dear. You can click those shoes together, the ruby slippers, and you can, go to the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think there's just a huge difference for people.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Cohen, when you talk, so you ready? You've done the work. You're ready to sit down with a lawyer. Look, the process sucks. It is painful. Anybody who's been through it, it's not fun. But now the work after and the healing after. And I think from what it wasn't the case for Nikki and I, because we did the work before, so the after was a little bit easier. But from what I hear from people, it's like when I get divorced, it'll be better, right? Or when I get the judgment, everything will be fine. And like Susan said, it's not necessarily the case, right? It's still, the problems are still there. You just have a judgment, right? A divorce judgment. Right. So what's some of the stuff, the healing of the post-divorce, the work that needs to be done after?
Well, I love what you're saying, Ben, and I think you say this way more eloquently than me, but like wherever you go,
said
there
no
you
one
are.
ever, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you have such good quips. Ben. But wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
So, it doesn't, your divorce. I mean, people come to me and say, will your book or your program work for me? I'm 10 years out. And I ask them like, I don't know, what does it feel like when I mention your ex-husband? And they say, well, my blood boils and my heart, starts beating really fast. Yeah, my book can help you. So basically my book is about releasing the hold your past and your ex has on your spirit and your light. The secret is that after the divorce, you are still there, and you need to look around, as you've said, Ben, before, like after the wreckage, and figure out, what do I want to keep? What do I want to shift? What matters to me? And am I ready to do this? And again, I'm focusing on we talk about this a lot. You are never going to change your ex. I mean, you tried that in your marriage, probably, maybe you tried it in the divorce. That's not going to happen. The only person you can change is you. So let's think about what you want to change. I have a chapter in the book about living your life by design, where I suggest that you really write down your ideal day, hour by hour. And for some people who've read the book, they've never even considered what they wanted to do during the day. They were just either defaulting to what their children wanted or their partner wanted or their work wanted. And so you probably have a lot of work to do just figuring out who you are. Someone recently said, like, will the real Elizabeth please stand up? Like, who is that person? And that's part of the process when you're going through a divorce. This is your next chapter. I like to think about it like graduate school. You have a lot of learning to do. And so let's get learning together, and you need some guidance. And that's where, Susan and you and my work comes in.
The idea of dating, obviously is a great chapter in the book, and or the process, I guess, of doing the work and when it's ready, and some of the things that you see. And Susan, please, after jump in, please, the do's and the don'ts, mistakes, and when you're ready, and if not, what the negative stuff, consequences can happen from that.
Yeah. So I just talked with our keynote speaker, Bella Gandhi, the other day, and we were totally in sync about this idea. She's going to be speaking at our summit, which we'll talk about. And she and I were just like, it was like we love talking to each other so much because we have the same idea. I created something called the Relationship Pattern Excavator for the book, where you actually really look at your relationships and look at the patterns really compassionately, but with curiosity, to see what patterns you notice so that you can see which patterns you want to continue and which you might not. I share the story in the book that the first date I went on after my divorce, I met this guy at a wedding, and then he invited me to his place a couple of nights later, and we were having a great time, drinking some wine. I smoked a cigarette, which I hadn't done in years. That should have been like a little bit of a red flag. But he's saying to me, so he turns to me and he says, "You're a psychiatrist, right?" Now, first of all, I'm a psychologist, but okay. And I said, "No," but he said, you can write a prescription for me for some Ativan, Xanax, and Klonopin, right? And I laughed and thought, no, I can't, because I'm a psychologist. Haha. And the next day I'm sitting in a 12-step room in a basement, and I'm laughing to myself. I'm like, here I am again. Like, I just had this great night with likely someone who asked me to write him prescriptions, illegal prescriptions. So, what was going on there? Like, what was going on with me? What was my pattern that this pattern kept happening? And in that moment, I realized I've got to figure this out, or else I'll keep finding myself in the same position. So that's really what I say for people with relationships. Like, a lot of people say, don't jump into it. Again, like all of my suggestions, turn inward, figure out, how did you get here? Why are you attracted to these kinds of people? What are you doing? Again, compassionately, so that you can understand how to do it differently next time.
Susan, we talk a lot about the stats of 50% for the first and 70 and so on, and exponentially higher as you get to the number of marriages. The cases that you've sort of worked on, I guess the annuities, the people that just keep on.
I have some of those clients, yes.
Right. Is it this? Are the issues the same with the client or with the ex that they bring, or that they're divorcing, partner that they're divorcing?
It's almost always, it's almost like they married another version of the person that I helped them get divorced from. I've told this story. I have one client where he's on his fourth marriage. I handled all three of the prior divorces. And really the only difference between wives 1, 2, 3, and 4 is they sequentially were getting younger as he was getting married again, but they were essentially the same person. Now, I will say wife 4 is a very different person. And the big difference is between wives 3 and 4, there were a number of years that went by. All the others were lickety split, like literally right after. And there was some work that was done. There was a final realization, some things that happened in his life. And that's a marriage that I think, it's still going strong as far as I know today. So haven't heard from him. And
if you haven't heard, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Cohen, the past 2 times we've had you on, we've talked about drugs and alcohol and in marriage, and as you guys know, it's very close to, passion of mine, and I've been lucky to be sober for quite a bit now. But advice to maybe people who are struggling with somebody who's struggling, and how to, and I know you have firsthand experience as well as educational experience, but to give people hope, or what things, not only hope, or things they can do to get themselves through.
Yeah. Well, Ben, again, when I hear about your years of sobriety, and just, congratulations, and so well done, and so hard won. So really, it's admirable. Look, they say in the Welcome to Al-Anon, which is one of the support groups for family members of alcoholics, our thinking becomes distorted. And so if you are dealing with someone who is actively using substances, or not using substances but doesn't have a full recovery program from substances, which we sometimes call a dry drunk, and you start feeling like something is deeply wrong with you, and that, or feeling really confused, or doubting yourself, or twisting yourself into a pretzel, just know that that's not how life has to be. That you have the dignity to live a life of clarity, of being fully safe in a relationship. And it doesn't mean you don't love the other person. It simply means that you deserve to be safe and clear-headed in a relationship. And so substance use is a disease. It is not, no one is doing it to you. No one is being, lazy, and they're having that experience, and you need to be safe and feel cared for and loved. And so you need to think about yourself. So often, I don't know if you've had this experience, Ben and Susan, but the sacrifice, the self-sacrifice that people do when they're with someone who's struggling from substances, this martyrdom, first of all, doesn't help the other person. I mean, trust me, I know. I tried everything to get my ex-husband sober. The only thing that got him sober was when he hit his own bottom, which was not at all what I thought would be his bottom. And so you want to allow the person the dignity to have their own experience, and you can't change them. So you can only focus on yourself. And so I guess I just want to tell people that I'm with you. I know how hard it is, but just know, I wish someone had told me that like, actually life doesn't have to be this hard. Life is complicated, but you don't have to feel like you're crazy all the time. Like that's not okay.
I guess, so it is, and not to diminish any or compare anything, worse, but is the recipe the same for some, if you have a partner with alcoholism, narcissism, an ass, a witch, whatever it is, that it's a W, by the way. That was a W. It was a witch.
W.
That really you can't control that other person, and you just need to focus on yourself.
Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, Ben and Susan we're all in these healthy, wonderful relationships. Like, control is not part of my relationship. Like, if you're in a healthy relationship, control should not be part of it in any way. You shouldn't want to be, if there's something you want your partner to do differently, you can sit down and have a conversation about it. But you cannot shift anybody. And if you're really satisfied, you shouldn't want to change that much about the person. I mean, maybe I would really love if my husband cleaned the kitchen a little more, trust me, but I not want to change like general things about him. And so I think that's important too. I wish someone had said that to me. Like, when I was in a relationship with someone who I wanted to change, I wanted him to change like pretty much everything about him. Like, that's probably not a good relationship. Right?
Yeah. Susan, jump in here. I know you have a great relationship with Dr. Cohen. I'm probably missing tons of sweet spots with her. So.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, I mean, I think that I remember very distinctly, although this is many years ago now for me, what it's like to be married to an active alcoholic, and becoming like the booze cop, right? I mean, Elizabeth, you probably did the same, running around the house and finding the hidden bottles, and trying to, if I could just find them all and get rid of them, then this time he won't get drunk. And there's an aspect in your book where you're talking about, something that was happening with one of the children. And so you were begging your husband, and I use that term very deliberately, begging your husband for that one night not to drink, right? Like, please tonight, don't drink. And that wouldn't stop it. And that's that feeling. I remember it. Like I read it in your book, and it brought that all back. And I think for anyone who's out there, as you're hearing us talking about it, and if you feel what we just, that story of Elizabeth, or what I'm saying about running around the house and hiding the alcohol and thinking that I'm, if I can just get him to stop for a while, it'll end. That's not going to do it. And we understand that almost desperate desire to believe that we can change it. And we can also, I think, all tell you that we can't. And it's actually very, very true. One of the things that, I talk about finding the hidden bottles and all. When my dad passed away, my mom was packing up some of his things to give to friends. And in his golf bag, she found like 12 little mini bottles of vodka hidden in his golf bag. Some were empty and some still had vodka in them. And, there's a light bulb for me with the, repeating patterns from a childhood where I knew how to make a gin martini at probably 6. You just start to realize that these patterns in your life are going to continue, and you may even extract yourself from a relationship with one addicted person. You may very well find yourself in another one if you don't, do that work on yourself. And really, that's where the healing starts to come.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I love about doing this, and is that at least Nikki, my role in this whole thing is just as hope, right? As that there can be a different outcome, and I think the one you bring up dry drunk, and people have asked me along the way, did you get sober after you and Nikki got divorced, or did the divorce? And I wish that was my excuse. Right. I mean, I was 12 years sober when Nikki and I, got divorced. And so you talk about dry drunk, I was just an asshole. And so, whether it's the disease of alcoholism and like your ex, finally found his sobriety, and never know when the miracle is going to happen, as they say. For me, I found a path to being sober, not just abstinence again, and getting back on the path. So, but the other thing is focusing on yourself and hoping the other person, eventually comes around. And I'm an example of somebody who came around. Your ex-husband is an example of maybe somebody who came around, and despite, what you had done on yourself. So I think that's the, one of the reasons I get on here, every week and do it. And at the end of the day, I have a better version of myself. I hope your ex, has a better version of himself for what's most important, and that's the kids. And my son, I guess has a better dad because of it.
Yeah, I think that, the idea of releasing control over someone you've committed a marriage to, it's so much goddamn pressure. Like, I just feel so much for all of us who are out there who just would do anything. Talk about white knuckling it, like white knuckling and keep this shit together. Like, just keep it together, as if like your job is to keep it together, as opposed to like keeping yourself safe. But that pressure I remember, I think I've shared the story that I looked in the mirror and said, like, we're never telling anyone about this. Like, this is our secret, his drinking. Like, we are keeping this under the fucking radar, and no one is going to know about this. And like that pressure I had to walk around with that. I mean, the fact that I didn't have like 14 ulcers is amazing to me. So I just want people, like, I'm hearing Susan's story, it's like we tell these stories. I mean, I have so many too, exactly, of like hiding the alcohol and trying to create the schedule so there's no booze. Like, what you forget is that that's doing something to us. That's turning us, that's the moment where I was on the hands and knees begging. Like, that turns us into someone that we can't live our full life. Like, I wasn't able to be who I'm really put on this earth to be when I was managing him all the time,
before let's get to this, and I think that what about children involved in that situation with substance abuse as far as a parenting plan? And I know we have friends that Soberlink that might be a good thing for this. So Susan, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, well, then Soberlink is a fantastic problem. And I do want to say from the start that the alcohol abuse is a problem if it's active. But if it is not active, if somebody has had an issue with a substance but has received treatment or is doing well with it, it is not something that usually will have a manifest impact on the parenting plan. But there are many things that can be done in order to protect children, but that do not deny the parent who has the substance abuse issue access to the children. Personally, I'm a fan of Soberlink. I've been very open about that. I find it is something, it's technology that when it came out, now we're talking several years ago, but it was a game changer, again, just like Dr. Elizabeth's book. But it really was, because the thing with alcohol specifically is that it stays in the system for such a short period of time that by the time we can get someone tested to prove they're drunk, they're not drunk anymore. And it doesn't show up. So unless they're staying drunk, which happens also, or we happen to catch them on a random test, it's not showing up in the hair. It's only showing up in urine or blood. So the thing with Soberlink is that it calls for randomized breathalyzer testing, essentially. But it's very technologically advanced so that it has facial recognition, so they can't hand it to one of the kids and say, blow into this straw for daddy or mommy, which, trust me, people were doing, or they, it works the same way, but because it's a device that someone can have with them, that testing can go on at almost any time, and it's instantaneous to the time that the test is requested. So they don't have the ability to let the alcohol wear off. And so, personally, if there's an issue of alcohol and substance use that the other party denies there being an issue, to me, it's like the easy way if they'll use it, they can prove they're not under the influence of alcohol. And if there is a problem, it's going to show that.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit skeptical. I've talked about this on the show before about it, because I was more focused on the weaponization of, the accusation. Because Nikki, I mean, if the divorce was south, she could have thrown that at me, and
Sure.
It looked and smelt and felt like alcoholism and drug addiction. Unfortunately, there was nothing in my system, but but it is a way to protect the kids, but also protect the parent to be able to see the kids. Other than Soberlink, Dr. Elizabeth, is there any advice about people involved in that situation as far as creating the parenting plan, or advice you can give? You're muted.
Yeah. Did we lose
Sorry.
you? There we go.
I would say it's really, really hard. First of all, it's really complicated. People write to me about this all the time as if there is this like perfect answer. And I just don't think there is a perfect answer. It's really, really hard. My sponsor in Al-Anon had me, I was so petrified when my ex started, and we did like kind of slow visits, so supervised visits. And it was really incremental when he came back in their lives. And I had this fear, we live in New York City, that he would be drunk and they would fall in front of the subway. And I kept having this repeated nightmare. And I was just telling her how afraid I was. And she said, my suggestion is to like lean into that fear. Like, let's just lean into it instead of like resisting it all the time. And when people read this, they think it's a wild idea, but it was the most helpful thing, because it wasn't happening to my kids, thankfully, but I was able to just lean into my fear of that so that I wasn't reactive. And then it really came to me like, it's really very unlikely for them to fall in front of the subway. Like, what is the likelihood really of my most feared reaction? So I had to do a little work on my fear. So I would recommend people to do that. And then I also think it depends on the ages of your kids. People always underestimate the power of a grounded, insightful, real parent. So if you are telling your kid and showing your kid what normal interaction is supposed to look like. When you listen, someone speaks and you listen to them and you understand them and you respond to them, they're going to notice if their other parent is not doing that. And they are going to come and tell you. And so I think a lot of times, I wonder what you think about this, both of you. I think people don't trust their kids, and they think in some ways because they got duped by their ex, the kids are going to get duped by their ex, but their kids were not raised by the same parents we were raised by. They're raised by you. And so they will see it. So I feel more hopeful than I think parents do sometimes. I don't know what you think about that.
Susan?
And I agree with Elizabeth. This is a really intractable problem, because as much as I have had clients who have been falsely accused of being ongoing, habitual drug users or alcohol abusers, I have also had clients and cases where we have had parents who are severely impaired in their judgment by a substance. And unfortunately, the nature of substance abuse is denial, right? Nobody is going to, when they say, oh, but come on, Betty, you have a drinking problem. Isn't it better the kids not be around you? Betty is never going to say, you're right. I'm not safe around my children right now. And so this is one of those areas, unfortunately, because without technology like Soberlink, where you truly have to keep a journal that identifies moments where you feel that there's an issue. If somebody shows up with the smell of alcohol on their breath, if you have to keep track of this, you have to be prepared at some point to get some sort of court order that's going to protect your children. Because if there is an active alcohol or drug abuse situation, then Elizabeth's fear, unfortunately, may have seemed, somewhat out there, but I've had children who have had harm happen when a parent was passed out drunk, in things like that. I've had children who've been in car accidents in cases of mine. So there is an alternate side to this, and I don't want to ramp it up, but I do want people to understand it is a very serious thing to make that allegation that a parent is so impaired that their parenting time should be impacted. And frankly, that's where I go back again to something like Soberlink, because it can prove whether there's a problem or not in a very short period of time. And judges are actually getting more familiar and more comfortable with that technology, and will say now when this comes up, I'm just going to order it. We're going to use it for a month. We're going to find out whether there's an issue. And then it either puts it on the table and we know we need to take steps, or it takes it off the table. And that's important.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say, because I get this a lot, Susan, I wonder if you get this too, or Ben, don't stay with someone though to protect the kids from having an addicted parent. I hear that all the time. I don't know if you, right? Like, not that you were saying that, but that's what people say, ask me, like, but I'm afraid to, because if we divorce, then they're going to be with the addicted parent. And it's like, no. I mean, first of all, you don't, again, like, give the person the dignity. Maybe if you divorce, they'll get sober. I mean, we don't know. But don't stay to keep your kids safe. That doesn't keep your kids safe.
No, I think that's, not to be too dramatic, but taking poison, hoping the other person die. I mean, right? I mean, it's like, why? But it's interesting because the one thing is, I guess they changed it since I got sober. It said alcoholism and drug addiction, substance abuse disorder, whatever they're calling it now, right? To me, and I might be wrong, but it's the only self-diagnosed disease known to mankind. Right. I mean, it's one thing that, your ex-wife or your ex-husband or your mom or your dad or your kids could say you're an alcoholic or you're an addict. But, it's not until that individual reaches that point. And I think that, to your point, Elizabeth, that I think one thing got me sober is my mom did everything possible to make my using and drinking harder instead of easier. Eventually, I mean, in the beginning, I was quite comfortable under that blanket of a codependency for a long time. But, once you pulled it off, it got cold real quick. But, I know there's chapters in your experience in the book, and Before we talk about the summit, tell people one more time where they can get your book, what it's called, the Manual of Divorce is what I'm calling
Yes, Manual of Divorce, the blueprint.
The blueprint.
You can find it at Amazon. It's called Light at the Other Side of Divorce: Discovering the New You. And you can also find it at Bookshop, which is this really nice website for local small bookstores. So it's also there. And you can buy it for yourself and you can buy it for a friend. So I have a whole section in the book about kind of understanding where you got the book from. So if you have a friend who, keeps talking about their ex, or, someone who you really think could use it, give it as a gift, because I think healing is the best gift you can give someone.
And it's just, I also wanted to say what impressed me most, another thing impressed me, not most, but that it's not, it takes into consideration the world we live in. It's not just man and woman, or, it's different, it's different faces, it's different, it's reality. It's the world we live in. So it's, it's not just for one size fits all.
Yeah.
Well, so here we are. And, I talked to Dr. Cohen, I don't know how many months ago, about doing something. And I'm just humbled to be a part of it, this hack, to be included in doing divorce differently. And go ahead, Dr. Cohen. This was your baby, so why are we doing this?
I was gonna say it was your baby. I guess it's our baby. So
that's true.
Spouses never. Don't worry.
Yeah, no,
exactly. Not that kind.
Not that kind of party, right?
All over Zoom, mind you. Immaculate conception of a summit through Zoom.
To space and back.
So I'm so honored to be part of this summit with leading divorce experts. Ben and I have spoken for a while about really wanting to share this message that divorce can be done differently, that what you see in movies and in TV and read in books is not how it has to be. He's an example of that. I'm an example of that. Susan's an example of that. And we got together with our dear friends, Ashley Nicole Russell, who runs the collaborative law firm and who is a leading expert in collaborative law. We have Michelle Dempsey, and she's an expert and an amazing advocate for women, empowering them, whether you have children or not. She's just an amazing warrior for women. We have the amazing Susan Guthrie, who being our fabulous. There's no one who's a better moderator.
And why we're all together is because of Susan Guthrie.
Exactly. She's the matriarch, the youngest matriarch of all time of the Doing Divorce Differently world. And then we have the amazing Bella Gandhi, who is just the most, on top of it, dating expert, radical, loving people who have gone through divorce and empowering women and men and however you identify to step into this next phase. And so we are so stoked to have this entire event coming up in just 7 days, next Wednesday. And we have VIP tickets. I'll let Susan talk a little bit about that, but this is going to be really something you can't miss it, because we're covering all aspects of divorce and how to do it differently.
And I think that's the key thing that I'm so excited about. I mean, it not only be included, with these titans, but one be the only guy, but that's something special.
You're used to that.
Yeah, I'm used to that. I only had one sister, so I like it better. But the idea that this does, I experienced it, growing up in a high conflict divorce, and it wasn't something my parents ever got over, after they got the quote unquote judgment. Mm-hmm. They lived miserably. It wasn't something us as kids got over after the judgment, or after we left home, or after we graduated college, or after my first marriage, or after my second wedding. So it's something that lasted and affected everybody like a cloud of toxicity. And so it's so exciting to find people like-minded who are just trying to educate people that it doesn't have to be that way. Because behind door number one is what I experienced, toxicity, just misery, or behind door number 2, there's Afterglow, and I'll use your phrase, Dr. Cohen. But it is, and you can be happy. And I think I read somewhere, Dr. Cohen, you said that you were so grateful or happy about your divorce, or and I am too, because like everything in my life, whether it be my addiction or whatever, if you learn from it and grow from it, you can look back and say, glad I went through it. So, Susan, where can people get tickets?
They can go to doingdivorcedifferently.com. We have 2 tickets. We have sort of, I guess I'll call it general admission, like this is a concert. And we also have VIP tickets, which this is exciting. So you have an opportunity, you see Dr. Elizabeth here, Ben, me, and all our other experts. You'll have a chance to have a virtual lunch with us, ask questions, talk with everyone before the event starts. And then you get this wonderful like goodie box, VIP box that has a little present from each one of us in there. There might be a special couple of books in there, and a few other exciting things. So, and you'll have access to the video after the event as well. So it's really going to be, I mean, somebody asked me today, what do you mean doing divorce differently? And I was like, 31 years I have been helping people through divorce. I've been through it. I can't even count how many there have been in 31 years. And they've all, until I started to modify my approach as an attorney, they were all the same divorce. They were a litigated, could have been a car accident lawsuit, but it happened to be a divorce. And you know what they were? They were a train wreck. They were a car accident. There is nothing about that process that is going to take you anywhere but where Ben went as a child. And okay, well, I was just going to say, I just spent a little time with Ben and his extended family. And I have to tell you, it's just the most heartwarming and wonderful experience to actually read that book and then see it come to life and realize the book doesn't even get how great it is. The book is awesome. It made me so happy to read it. I've read it twice. I always talk about that. And just to be there with them and to see that family, and that's what it is. If you just do it differently, I promise you, do it differently. You'll be so happy that you did.
Yeah, after almost a year and a half of knowing Susan and doing this every week, we finally got to meet in person, and she got to meet Nikki and all Chad and Nadia and all the Asher and all the powers that be, and my little ones who wanted to kidnap her and didn't understand why.
Kidnap them.
And didn't understand why Miss Susan had to leave. But so, Dr. Cohen, where can people find you? Social media?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention also about the Doing Divorce Differently that all the proceeds are going to go to charities related to divorce-related issues. So that's just an important piece. And thank you, Susan, for making the most beautiful doingdivorcedifferently.com website. So you can find me at drelizabethcohen.com, and that's drelizabethcohen.com. You can order the book there on my book page or on Amazon, as I said. Always love to hear people on Instagram. I'm the Divorce Doctor. I'd love to hear from people. Happy to answer questions and help in any way I can.
Oh, and let me just, Elizabeth is on the Divorce and Beyond podcast on Monday. Her book comes out on Tuesday next week. On Wednesday, we have the Doing Divorce Differently event. And on Thursday, Elizabeth and I are doing a special event at Shakespeare & Company bookstore, not in New York, sadly. I would love to be in New York with her, but we're doing a virtual event that you can all come to. How do they get that? The link?
That's all on my, you can get the link through in Instagram. If you look in my bio, I have all of that there. You can buy tickets for Doing Divorce Differently, for Shakespeare, for my book, everything's there.
Right. And then, of course, where are we here? There we are. There's where you can find Susan Guthrie and Kate Anthony and ourselves on social media, everything. So you have Dr. Cohen on, would release tomorrow?
Monday morning, the 19th, the day before her book comes out. And we
And then
take
you're
a
all-
deep dive.
I mean, you're doing the tour. You're also on Ashley Nicole's on Friday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
With
And
Susan?
I'm on Michelle's on Friday or something too. Yeah, I'm doing the circuit. This is the virtual book tour, I guess.
Well, it's a lot better than, well, it's easier, I guess you could say, than I think Nikki and I had to fly up to Seattle for a day to do something. But anyways, thank you, Dr. Cohen. I'm only contractually obligated for Susan for an hour, so she gets
I have to go now. No,
she gets very expensive after an hour.
Exactly.
But thank you so much for everything you do and your work and the book. I mean, it's, like I said, a game changer. And I read it and I was like, I don't know why we wrote a book, but it is going to help people tremendously. And I know that doing divorce differently, hopefully will, make an impact and get people educated that it doesn't have to be that way. So thank you both very much.